What's up, Rockstars? Today I have a big video to go over a lot of the changes for Gloomhaven, the second edition, how it is consumer friendly versus not, all of the changes they've gone through. There's an interview with Isaac I'll be covering where he talks about the cultures in the game, the changes to it, especially the classes, the makeup of it, all that kind of stuff. So stay tuned because we have a lot to go over. Okay, first things first. Takes place June 20th in 16 days, about 17 days really, at time of recording at least, you will be able to get your hands on this. And there's a few things to go over. First of all, this is a huge game. So before I even go over the changes, let me just say this. Gloomhaven, the role-playing game, Miniatures of Gloomhaven, and Gloomhaven 2nd Edition are all launching. This is 3 different campaigns. There is a problem I'm seeing within the industry, a sickness that is not consumer-friendly, that is harder on us, that hurts both the company and us. They just don't see it right away. In an attempt to generate huge amounts of revenue and get this big number that everybody thinks about and you get news coverage on all this stuff, I feel like they sacrifice a lot of profit for that revenue. And that's because the scope is just insane. This is 3 different campaigns and they're shoving it all in here. Aeon Trespass Odyssey has done this, right? Many others have done this where they just have so much crammed into one campaign that it costs a ton to get it all. Whereas before we would be able to get it in 3 separate things like normal. It costs them a lot. There are so many SKUs that it eats into their profits as they have to ship the right amount of the right things to people. And then when you can buy so many things, you end up getting the emails that they bought like 27 items, but they actually only got 25 and you need to send the other 2, but you don't have any even in Europe that it needs to send to or whatever. So you got to airmail them there. It's a mess, guys. This is not the way to do it. This should be 3 separate campaigns. It's them just wanting to go, I gotta do it right now. And then it costs a huge amount. Nobody can afford it all hardly. And it just kind of makes people upset. And it'll take longer because now you have to deliver all 3 of these all at once unless you're doing separate waves, in which case they should be separate campaigns. Simple as that, my opinion. That being said, 60,000 people have even provided their email for that, which is huge. I mean, that is just amazing. That is a ton of stuff. So what is going on with the 2nd edition? This is the new bit, it's the 2nd edition here, right? That is kind of what's going on here. Okay, so right down here, first of all, you're going to see this. I want to point this out because as you can see, this is the old art. And I have always said this and I stand by my statement. I do not like the art in Gloomhaven and even in Frosthaven. I don't think this looks good. I think to me, it just looks really kind of ugly. Not so much in like its even design or color usage, just in like the way people are drawn and stuff like that. It doesn't look very professional to me. It looks like a college student got to like draw it or something like that. It's definitely not my style. It's a style that just to me seems a little weird, and how people are posed and walk and their hands are like who walks like I don't know. It just seems weird to me. Anyway, that's my opinion here. I also don't know who he's playing cards with, but whatever. This is the new art. So much better. This is great art. So like it leaps and bounds better. There's just no even like a 100% this is better art in my opinion. So very, very happy to see that. In my opinion, such an acclaimed game, in my opinion, deserves like really stellar art, and I think this fits it quite well. It's not the best art I've ever seen, in my opinion. Of course, it's all subjective, but in my opinion, miles better than the other one. Very much enjoy this art more. I mean, a lot. But let's talk about some of the 2nd edition here. So the 2nd edition is a revised and elevated version of the award-winning core game of Gloomhaven. So it's just Gloomhaven. In other words, not Jaws of the Lion or anything like that, just core game. The world, story, and challenging gameplay are all the same, but there is a plethora of additional content to explore. Even for those who have played Gloomhaven before, this edition brings new material to the table with rebalanced and redesigned mercenary classes, items, and scenarios, as well as brand new artwork, newly written narratives and events, updated miniatures, a new faction-based reputation system, and more. And yes, and more. There is a ton of difference here. So let's go ahead over to this Polygon interview that they had with Isaac, who created Gloomhaven, of course, and go over kind of what was said. We're just gonna go top to bottom. We'll just do that. I think I could organize it a little bit, by like jumping around, but let's just follow the flow of the interview itself. I think it kind of helps just to see that flow as well. So for again, art. So much better. So much better. There has obviously been a lot of community feedback over the years. Isaac said, I'm going to say Isaac of Childress or whatever, because I'm not sure I'm saying that right. We've kind of brought everything in line to make classes all feel about the same, but also still feel fun to play, even more fun to play in some cases. I wanted to clarify this because I think this is obviously worded, I think, casually here. He's not trying to say they all feel the same. Like, playing one is like playing the other, and the feeling of playing them is all the same. That is a big part that us as like critics will often say about board games. If the actions you take aren't really the same, the fluff around it doesn't really feel different. So playing one character versus another, play about the same, you feel about the same. There's not actually that much difference. So they could say, we have 16 characters, but if they all feel the same, doesn't really matter, right? I don't think he's saying that. I think that's just something that maybe there's some like cross syntax that's a little bit messed up. What he's saying is that they are more balanced. In other words, they're more cohesive in that when you're playing through this with this character or this character, the feeling of playing through it will feel the same. You won't be struggling or overpowered, because they talk specifically about this, like Eclipse saying that they were like super overpowered and now they've changed that. That's why I think the context matters, right? So when he says feel the same, he's not saying that. He's just saying like they will be more in line in a balanced way. But perhaps the most substantive changes to the game come in its storyline and its deeper lore. I think this is directly because of the RPG. Again, when you write down and you work so much on an actual world that's really thought out for like an RPG, that helps then put that into the main game. I've actually watched a class Brandon Sanderson was teaching once about, he's an author if you didn't know, and he was talking about how when you want the reader to feel like you've thought of everything, when of course you haven't. You've thought in a way that it makes sense structurally to where you could easily make up what happened, but you don't actually have that. So what you want to do is, here's like what's written, here's what's alluded to, and everything that what's alluded to or you can infer from, that's thought of as well. But that next step down there, haven't made it up yet, right? It's a made up world. You didn't think about, the logistics of this or that or whatever. But as long as the world is believable and you've thought that, like, here's what's here and here's the direct side stuff, people will feel like it's well thought out. Not everybody's Tolkien. That's totally fine. When you do an RPG, that's when you start to fill it even that little bit, and that can then be driven into here. So I'm sure he thought of the world plenty in the first Gloomhaven, but he's guaranteed to have thought of it a lot more since then. So makes sense to me. Makes total sense to me. You can see the art there. Very, very fun. Okay, we've basically rewritten everything. This is important, I think, for later, but what he's saying is like, this is like top to down. This is a second edition. This is not a supplement. This is not a 1.5. This is Gloomhaven redone. This is the Resident Evil 4 remake from Capcom. It's still Resident Evil 4, but it is different in this sense. Like, it is now a more modern take on the same thing. And that's pretty much in every way. We've tried to integrate factions better into the story and into the mechanics of the game. So again, mechanics will be different as well, Isaac said. When you achieve the ultimate goal with a faction, you get to open an envelope, and there's a bunch of new stuff in there that you get to play with. So they've really brought out the three main factions of Gloomhaven a lot more, and you kind of have to pick and choose what you're doing there, and you actually get a secret unlock when you actually get all the way. So again, very, very much taking the same thing, but putting not just a spin on it, but a retelling of it. That's kind of what I'm gathering here. Again, art, love it. Along with a full rewrite, Isaac has also taken the opportunity to go back to the game's many fantastical ancestries and make amends for what he considers to be oversights and slights against real-world groups that inspire them. I'm going to keep reading. I do have a comment here. Stay tuned. In addition to all the balancing issues with Gloomhaven, Isaac said, these have been a big personal thorn on my side as well. The kind of tropey nature of a lot of the writing in the original Gloomhaven and the characterization of some of the ancestries there. They did the twice, she when you Polygon. Where there were clear parallels to real-world ethnicities that didn't sit well for a lot of people. The Inox, for example, have been altered dramatically so that they no longer diminish even casually Native American and First Nations people. At this point, it's kind of embarrassing to me that it's so out there in the public. Okay, let's break that down, and then we'll move on to the upgrade kit or lack thereof, stuff like that. Now, I've made mistakes in the past when commenting about this, so I don't want you to... I hope that you can allow me to have a more matured, nuanced take on that than me being just dumb in the past. Okay, so hopefully, first of all, that helps, and maybe this will help prove that a little bit on kind of where my headspace is at and what I'm thinking of here. First of all, I think that this was worded probably better than Isaac has ever worded something before, especially at that time. I don't think he worded things well back then. I think he worded a lot better now. So two things. I guess we'll start with, I understand why he removed them. Because of this, it's not so much that he has a make-believe character or race that kind of has strong parallels to something like Native Americans in the America. So instead, he's saying diminish even casually. In other words, this was not exactly a good look at it, if that makes sense, right? It's either stereotypical or it's looked at in a bad light or a down light, and that sort of negative association, typically not good unless you're actually using it as a teaching tool. And that's, I guess, where my difference is from this. So what he's saying is essentially, I don't want those parallels though. I'm going to remove them. I would love for him to actually speak on that, right? In other words, you're not diminishing them, but you're really talking about that in a more mature way. For instance, I brought up Dragon Age Origins before. If you've not played that, it's by BioWare. It's a CRPG kind of from back in the day at this point. But one of the big things there that they do is like the elves that live in slums and are like enslaved and do all this kind of stuff. And it's definitely writing parallels. It's purposely doing that so that you can kind of associate with that while also talking down on it. It's not viewed as a good thing. You see bad people doing this kind of stuff. You can do that in any, in all sorts of kinds of movies, right? It's like, okay, so you can watch Django and the movie, and it has slavery, brutal slavery even, but it doesn't show the slavers in a good light, right? Like it shows that it's like, this is a bad thing. So you can have it, and you can even draw those parallels. And sci-fi shows like Star Trek do this in almost every episode they've ever made, right? Where like, oh, this alien race is like this direct parallel to this. But I'm going to speak on it culturally and try to make an impact there. I appreciate that level of mature storytelling. So I would have preferred doing that there. But if Isaac is not prepared or comfortable for doing that, because it is a very nuanced and hard discussion to have on that stuff to make sure you get it right. Right. So if he's not willing or wanting or desiring to do that, then I agree, remove it. Either do that or don't do it at all. So in that sense, I'm happy he's doing that and kind of stepping away from that. I think that is appropriate. Nobody wants a sloppily written or casually written thing like that. And again, he's talking about how it's kind of embarrassing because it was like, again, it's like the first thing he's doing there, and he's not thinking super hard about all that. It's like he's maliciously writing it or anything, right? He's just using common tropes and doing stuff like that. People do it all the time. But when you create something and then put it out in the world, it's then just there. Right. And then you just have to kind of grow from it. Much like my video that covered this originally, right? Where I don't remove content. If you want to see me look like an idiot, you can look in the past and see all my mistakes. I don't try to and censor it or like delete it or hide it from anybody. So while I can grow from that, it's always there, and it's a little embarrassing, right? So I can even relate a little bit. Like I get it. And I think this explanation was worded really well. Right. I would have liked to see the talk about, if you do have that in your games, then you need to like really be appropriate with it. But you otherwise, don't have it in there. So I wish he had done more, because I like that style of storytelling. That's why I like sci-fi stuff like that. But yeah, anyway, I understand why it's there. Okay, let's talk about this last bit here. There will be no standalone conversion box, another upgrade pack for you to purchase. You will have to buy Gloomhaven all over again to play this version. There's no way they're doing that. The original owners can buy to bring their setup to current. The changes, Isaac said, simply run too deep. In other words, this is more of a retelling than we took Gloomhaven and updated these cards and changed this. This is not a 1.5. The story is written pretty much from the ground up different. While it's telling the same beats, it is different. All the art is different. The layouts are different. Mechanics are different, right? You would have to change so much that by the time you were done with the upgrade pack, you will have already bought in the new game anyway. The only difference is perhaps the minis, which again, I assume they are updating as well, just like they did with Frosthaven. So this is a completely new game. So I know people are upset about the lack of an upgrade pack, but they're thinking about it wrong, I feel. This is not something, the upgrade pack would cost just as much and it would come in a box with Gloomhaven on it. Like, you're just rebuying it anyway because it is completely revamped and kind of his new style of making things. So anyway, there's a lot to unpack there. Obviously, there's a lot of contention points about an upgrade pack, about doing this. My main thing really is just the having 3 campaigns in one. The RPG should be its own campaign. The miniature should be its own campaign, and the second edition should be its own campaign. My opinion. Release them all in 2023, by all means, if that's what you want to do, right? And then just do them like for the last 3 quarters or something like that. But at least it's not right there all at once. But I suspect he's wanting to break his record again and make even more money. And this is a way to drive up that revenue, that public, value that everybody sees. Though I do feel it's at the cost of a lot of logistical nightmare issues for him. Once he has that many SKUs, he has to kind of divvy out across the world all at once. I expect delays. I expect messy deliveries. I expect all that stuff, just like we see time and again when companies put too much into one campaign. My opinion, though. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Let me know, of course, in the comments below. And as always, if you have a comment about any of these subjects I've talked about, feel free to make them. Be respectful, right? Be good people, but I don't have to warn you guys. You guys already know that. Guys, I always appreciate the conversations we can have. I look forward to a lot more. As you can see, with your old world right there, it's coming. So stay tuned for that. And I'll talk to you guys again very, very soon. Bye, guys.